of a superhero. Yeah, you. Who else would I be talking to? Think of a superhero. Hurry it up. Yeah. You got one? Okay, cool. So, first superhero that comes to mind. I'm willing to bet for a lot of you it was either Batman, because videos about Batman, he was in the thumbnail, he was in the title, or maybe Spider-Man. I'd argue that Batman and Spider-Man, probably the two biggest superheroes, right? Unless you're a nerd and you thought of like Plastic Man or something to be different. No, but he was not the first one that came to mind. You're lying to yourself. You thought of Batman, you thought of Spider-Man, and you were like, I'm gonna be special. I'm gonna think one that nobody else is gonna think of, and I'm not gonna guess it. Well, guess what? I guessed it. Okay. Wipe that stupid smug grin off your face, Leland. I see you. You're not special. You're not different. Think of a normal superhero. Maybe you thought of Superman too, or like Iron Man. That would also be an acceptable pick. But this video isn't about either of them. So think of Batman or Spider-Man. Those are your two options. Switch it. Switch it now. Okay, you got Batman, you got Spider-Man? No, you can't think of both, Batman or Spider-Man. Okay, good, thank you. So, now that you're thinking of Batman or Spider-Man, I'm going to give you a little pop quiz of sorts, okay? So I hope you've been studying up on Batman and Spider-Man in the time between now and when I told you to think of Batman or Spider-Man. So, here we go. Question 1. How many live-action Spider-Man actors have we had in the past 30 years? Time's up. You got it in your head? Give me more time? Don't care. So, how many actors have we had? If you said 3, you got it right. Good job. We got Tobey Maguire.
No.
You guys need to back up. I can't see the cars.
Okay, back up, guys. You can't see the cars.
They got it.
We got Andrew Garfield, and the current one, Tom Holland. Now, question 2 of this quiz. This one's a little harder, so I'll give you a little bit more time. How many live-action Batman actors have we had in the last 30 years? Okay, time's up. You got it in your head? What? No, you don't get any more time. I said I'd give you a little more, not significantly more. That's all the time you get. You can pause the video too. So, we've had five live-action Batman actors in the past 30 years. So, too many live-action Batman actors is the answer that I would give. And no, Leland, Bruce Wayne from the Gotham TV show doesn't count. Stop trying to be different. Since Batman Forever came out in 1995, we've had 5 big screen live-action Batmans. And that's not even counting the Batmans we had before that. Men, whatever. That's not even counting the Batman actors we had before that. Adam West, Michael Keaton, both of those guys preceded the 5 that I'm referencing that we had in the last 30 years. So what, that in total, that's like 7 live-action Batman total, as opposed to 3 live-action Spider-Mans total. That's a lot. That is way too many, in my opinion. And I feel like out of the 3 Spider-Man actors, I feel like all 3 are somewhat respected and enjoyed by most people. You know, some people aren't a fan of Andrew Garfield's portrayal. Maybe you have other opinions on the other ones. But I think even people who don't like Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man or a different Spider-Man would take that Spider-Man over George Clooney Batman with the batnipples. So, why is it that Spider-Man seems to have so much more success in live-action film than Batman? Batman, you might argue, is a more popular superhero. It's probably close, but why have we historically had so much trouble making good, consistent live-action Batman movies? I feel like we reboot Spider-Man every 10 years or something, yeah, but I feel like we reboot Batman about every 10 minutes. The moment I get hooked or attached to a certain Spider-Man, next time I go to the theater to see him, it's a different dude all of a sudden. Where'd the other guy go? I like the other guy. So what's the issue? Why is it that they keep screwing up and starting over with live-action Batman? Why can't they keep one consistent for a significant period of time? Nowadays in the world with the MCU, we live in this world of interconnected cinematic universes. So in a world like that, especially swapping out what is arguably your most iconic character, yeah, maybe Superman, yada yada, but in my opinion, Batman's the face of DC Comics. So swapping out that character every 5 seconds can't be a good move on the studio's part or the viewer's part. Maybe it keeps people coming in to see the new one, but I feel like it probably does more harm than good. And it just gets confusing. Like, not even 3 years ago, we had a new Batman in the form of Robert Pattinson, and James Gunn is already planning to recast and reboot a new live-action Batman for his cinematic universe. I don't know if we're keeping the Matt Reeves, Robert Pattinson universe as well as this one, two at the same time. I don't know, but I like this one. Why can't we just keep one Batman? I like the one we have. And I get it. Not everything has to be connected, but not everything has to be a cinematic universe. Yeah, I get it. But when you have two live-action Batmans running around at the same time, within like less than a decade of each other, that's just kind of confusing. At least for me, I like when a studio focuses on one main version of the character. I want one Batman to put all my energy and viewing time towards. I feel less motivated to watch the Matt Reeves, Robert Pattinson Batman when I know that it's not even going to be the main one. Like, it's not going to be part of the main universe, if that makes sense. Now, I know, like, still watch what you enjoy. Obviously, that's not like an incentive, like, oh, this isn't part of the main thing. But there is a little part of me that's upset that we won't get to see Robert Pattinson's Batman in the main universe. It's already going to be a different guy. I was starting to get attached to this one because at the end of the day, all those characters are Batman, and it's just hard to get invested in one when they're switching them all the freaking time. So what's the problem? And, you know, I wouldn't say that all these Batmans are bad. That's not at all what I'm trying to say. In fact, I'd say I enjoy at least something about each iteration of Batman that we've had in some way. Yes, even you, George Clooney, with your batnipples. So I'm not saying that all the Batmans we've gotten are bad, but rather, why so many? Why can't we keep one consistent for more than like 2 years? Well, I'd argue that the issue is balance. I feel that with comic book movies and comic book cinematic universes, when they're trying to perfect their formula, they tend to suffer from one of two main issues. On one hand, you've got projects that seem embarrassed to be comic book movies, the ones that seem like they're ashamed of their source material to some extent, or try too hard to be dark, gritty, realistic. And this isn't always an awful thing. And comic book movies with this issue can still be amazing movies, just not necessarily amazing comic book movies, if that makes sense. For example, both Christopher Nolan's Batman trilogy and Matt Reeves' Batman universe are fantastic pieces of media, in my opinion, but I do think they just try a little too hard to ground themselves in reality. When you do this, you can get a good finished product, but with this approach, there are certain parts of the source material you just won't be able to do because you're trying to be too realistic, and certain things from the original material you just won't be able to fit in there. Like, I can't imagine Mr. Freeze or Calendar Man showing up in the Robert Pattinson Batman world, or at least not without being heavily changed to fit in somehow. Like, for example, yeah, they put Riddler in the newest Batman movie, but not this goofy guy in green question mark spandex. He's like an incel serial killer with a mask, and he's terrifying in a lot of ways. And Penguin, for example. I gotta say, I love the Penguin TV series, but this Penguin isn't the freaky little British top hat man who's friends with penguins that we know from the comics or some of the older Batman movies. He's a scary mobster with a deformed foot that makes him waddle a little bit, so people rarely call him the Penguin as an insult, and that's kind of how we justify him being the Penguin. You see what I'm saying? By that logic, if Mr. Freeze was in the Matt Reeves Batman universe, he'd just be like a serial killer who happened to have frostbite on his left hand one time and had to get a finger removed. So, like, people, like, call him that, like, once in the movie. Like, hey, Mr. Freeze, you're missing a finger. And that's how they justify it. And listen, I love the Batman. I love Matt Reeves' The Batman. I don't mind that it's an alternate take on Batman. But while I think that this is a really good movie, I don't think it's a good Batman movie in some ways. I don't think it's necessarily a faithful, good adaptation of the source material, if that makes sense. But then, on the other hand, we have the Batman movies that have the opposite problem that makes them not work. ones that are so insanely goofy and silly that they just don't take themselves seriously. And I think you know which ones I'm talking about. The Joel Schumacher films mainly are the ones that have this problem. Batman Forever and Batman and Robin, which, despite the fact that I think these are supposed to be sequels to each other, they have two different Batman actors, which already kind of makes things weird and confusing, but whatever. Oh, and also George Clooney appeared for like 2 seconds in The Flash, I guess, if any of you watched that movie. Hopefully you didn't. Now, I'll admit, the Joel Schumacher Batman films, they aren't good in any sense of the word. I don't think too many people will argue with me on that. But I do think they have their own silly charm to them in a stupid way. And also I like Jim Carrey as the Riddler. I like him as the Riddler. But while these films aren't afraid to be goofy and corny and silly, they treat these parts as a joke, which again kind of circles back to them maybe being a little bit embarrassed about the source material. The only way they're willing to put the sillier parts of the source material in there is if they're specifically as a joke. We'll make this so goofy and silly and bad that people will know that we're self-aware. Like Mr. Freeze watching Christmas specials in his lair, which, albeit is a little funny, seems like it's making a joke out of the source material that isn't really supposed to be a joke. Now, I'm not necessarily saying we need a comic-accurate calendar man in a mainline Batman movie. But I think we need a Batman movie that isn't afraid to be a little goofy. We need a Batman film with balance. A movie that is a faithful adaptation of Batman. Isn't afraid to put in all the different parts of Batman. The silly parts, the stupid parts. But also takes them seriously. Takes Batman seriously. Takes itself seriously. Because even though these things, by our standards, like a big clay monster or a killer clown man, they're kind of silly to our world, but this isn't our world. This is Batman's world. To them, this is a normal threat. This is a normal occurrence. This is something that could have genuine weight. And even if from a viewer standpoint, we're like, oh, that's kind of stupid, to them, it shouldn't feel that way. The movie should take these silly things as real, as serious. And that's how you make a good Batman movie. We as the viewers can acknowledge that something's a little silly. In the comic book world, silly things are normal. Make those silly things serious to the characters, and that's how you make a good, balanced movie. Because in Batman's world, bald men with ice guns are threats. So we need a Batman movie that is silly, but also takes itself seriously. And it's not impossible. It's been done before. I think Tim Burton's Batman movies are probably the best example of a good, balanced Batman movie we've had. They have just the right level of darkness, grittiness, seriousness, great music, and realism, but they aren't afraid to be true to their source material and be silly. And be silly at times. They have just the right level of darkness, grittiness, seriousness, and realism, but aren't afraid to be true to their source material and get a little silly at times. But they treat the silly comic book, and how many times am I going to say silly in this video? Somebody start a silly counter. Like, count, if you're bored, count how many times I say silly, and leave a comment. You'll be my favorite little munchkin subscriber if you count all of them and timestamp each one. I'll be proud of you. Now, anyways, they treat the silly comic book antics as real, normal things in that universe. They're serious and gritty, but also feel like you're in a comic book at the times where it matters. Stop trying to make Joker realistic by making him like a crazy guy twisted by society, or a guy with like a cut-up face that kind of looks a little bit like a clown. Yeah, Barry Keoghan, I'm looking at you, pal. And I love Heath Ledger. I love Barry Keoghan. I love their portrayals. But I miss having a comic accurate, like, oh, I don't want to sound like one of those people. Oh, this isn't comic accurate. But a classic Joker. Just a classic Joker. A well-dressed, dapper man who's a force of chaos and is just kind of evil for the sake of being evil. He's not worked by society. He's just a crazy clown. He's a crazy clown. That's all you gotta do. Put in a clown and make him kind of crazy. That's what I want to see. I'm tired of this deep society stuff. I don't know, maybe none of that made sense and I'm just spouting gibberish. I just like yapping about Batman, what can I say? TLDR, or TLDW, too long didn't watch. Stop rebooting Batman for 5 minutes, please. What's that? You're rebooting him? You're rebooting Batman right now to make me mad? No, please, 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 please let me keep him. Just don't, stop, don't reboot Batman. Don't reboot Batman!